Cesar. Baby bear. Don't know. I see you. Who's my handsome baby? Yeah. Mommy video recording me. I see you. Who's my handsome baby?
It is just crazy to me that the doctors would jump to child abuse. They should consider child abuse, but they must rule out, they have an obligation to rule out other metabolic disorders. Now, in a matter of months, baby Cesar can be put up for adoption, and his parents could lose him forever. I'm back with Kurt, Yodit, and baby Cesar's parents, Jessica and Cesar. Now, Jessica, we mentioned before the break that you had refused a polygraph. Why?
Basically, I did tell the detective that I'd be willing to take a polygraph. However, I wanted a letter from him stating that my son would be returned home once I passed that test. And he stated he could not promise to me that he would be lying to me, and I would have to deal with Children and Youth Services. He basically deals with the criminal investigation, and they round together, but they make the determination.
Let me bring in, Jessica, I'm going to bring in the attorney, Mark Freeman, representing you. He is representing Jessica and Cesar, of course. And Mark, you've had previous dealings with Dr. Cromwell, who is the doctor that really certified that this was child abuse and not a metabolic problem. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Why did Dr. Cromwell insist on child abuse to the... Did she look into other potential causes of multiple fractures? Did they test for osteogenesis imperfecta? Did they test for Ehlers-Danlos? Did they test for vitamin D metabolism disorders, hyperparathyroidism? There's so many disorders that can do this. Did they rule these things out?
Well, here's the interesting thing is this child tested deficient in vitamin D. But this doctor then takes the position that that has no impact on bone health or bone strength, which I find illogical.
Well, there's not illogical. There's a name for it. That's called Ricketts disease. Ricketts, and I understand that this child even had the bowing of the legs that is characteristic of Ricketts.
The baby has a lot of signs of rickets, but I think they've stuck their head in the sand. Unfortunately, this doctor isn't alone. I've seen it in multiple cases, even with other doctors that claim to be child abuse experts.
But why? Why would they do that? I don't understand.
That's a good question. All I can tell you is I've had case after case where when we start digging, we find explanations for these unexplained injuries. And no matter what we find or when we find it, I have yet to have one of these doctors say we made a mistake and change their opinions.
Let me get another someone who's close to this action as well. His name is Jamal Billups. Jamal's two daughters were taken from him and his wife after the same physician, Dr. Cromwell. And again, I'm not condemning Dr. Cromwell. I'm all for her being enthusiastic about protecting kids from abuse and even assuming abuse until something else is ruled in. But let's rule those other things in if you can. She examined their 3-month-old and determined that the broken bones were the result of child abuse. He, Jamal, then spent 414 days in jail, and it was later determined that child had vitamin D deficiency. Now, Jamal, you spent over a year in prison for something you didn't do. Please, what are your thoughts here?
Yes, I definitely did spend that time in there. It needs to stop. It needs more light on these situations. More people need to speak about this and put a stop to this. This is incorrect, and I just don't agree with it. It's not right.
You seem pretty measured and sensible about this. Yodit, this is the gentleman you were talking about. Do you have any questions for him?
So, Jamal, what were the allegations against you?
That I had shaken my daughter, that I had physically harmed my child.
And that the shaking, it was a shaken child syndrome where it resulted in bone fractures, not bleeding in the head, right?
No,
it was...
So, Jamal, go ahead, finish.
Yes, it was shaken baby syndrome is what they charged me with.
Now, Yodit, you know that's often associated with bleeding. I'll bring my brain out again, between the skull and the brain, right here on top of the brain. I don't know if that was involved here. That's a different disorder than what we've been talking about with these fractured bones. But Yodit, what's going on? Is there just excessive enthusiasm? Is it a bureaucratic issue? What is it?
It's so easy for families to get tied up with the state when it comes to issues of child abuse, and it's so hard to get out of them. And this doctor, there's a credibility issue here. You know, case in point, Jamal's case, she was so adamant to say that, you know what, that this individual abused their daughter, and guess what? That wasn't the case, and that doctor, very same doctor, isn't even trying to consider other alternatives for baby Cesar's injuries at this point. And so,
I'm just trying to figure it out. Kurt, maybe she's taking the opinion that there may be some bone disorder and a shaken baby, which is why all the multiple fractures.
Well, that makes sense, Dr. Drew. Now, Yodit's doing a great job of cross-examining the expert witness, which is what we do as lawyers. You make them prove their case. I think that's great, and if the state wants to take this child, it needs to submit to that kind of examination. I'm very concerned about the lack of any kind of independent expert.
Right,
Mr. Freeman, obviously representing his client, as he should. He's hiring an expert who's going to give a story that's consistent with his story. I'd like to see someone from outside, because, Dr. Drew, the one fact we know is we have a baby with 18 broken bones. Something's wrong. We need to find out what it is.
And that something wrong may be the metabolism of the bone. Jessica and Cesar, have you been able even to see your baby or visit?
Yes, we do see him twice a week for a total, 2 hours each.
At least there's that, but my God, 2 hours must just be torture when you have to leave. Listen, you guys, thank you for joining us. I appreciate our so-called expert witnesses here that was cross-examined by Yodit. Next up, George Zimmerman is selling